Today we're talking about introverted intuition. We will explore this cognitive function by focusing on each of the 8 positions that it can fulfill in the cognitive stack, and we will link this to which of the personality types make use of this function in that particular way. So tune in for that. We will discuss about it in the next minutes. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. Okay, so firstly we've got introverted intuition as a hero or dominant function. This is the case of INFJs and INTJs. And what this means is that introverted intuition will manifest as kind of the leader of all of the cognitive functions. It will be the function coordinating everything else, and it will dominate the psyche of INFJs and INTJs. How this manifests is in a tendency to, on the one hand, focus on a lot of underlying meanings and always trying to understand what things could possibly mean. What is down there? What is beneath the surface? How can we look at things in such a way that we can really get to the core of things? And of course, this kind of manifests in the tendency to overly interpret some things, although they tend to be right in many of the situations. But if overused and if used in an unhealthy way, this can also lead to a tendency to be very negative about things, very obsessed with planning the future and seeing the future and being overly confident in these insights. Although they can be true in many situations, it is important for INFJs and INTJs to understand that this is not everything. Also, this introverted intuition enables INFJs and INTJs to focus on the future and plan very systematically in such a way that things follow from one thing to another, and so on and so forth. And how I experience it in my mind is like sort of a succession of boxes that clearly portray the amount of time that is inside of that box, and things kind of naturally flow, although sometimes it's very difficult to put it into words because of its introverted nature. Secondly, we've got introverted intuition as a parent or auxiliary function. This is the case of ENFJs and ENTJs, who also care a lot about underlying meanings and patterns and themes, similarly to INFJs and INTJs, and they also care a lot about planning and strategizing for the future. It's just that their usage of this function tends to be a little less obsessive, so you will often notice that ENFJs and ENTJs seem to have a better conscious control of their introverted intuition, and it seems that their intuition is used in a healthier, more organized way, because they don't rely on it way too much in such a way that it kind of demolishes everything else. And they will use their insights and their ability to think about the future and anticipate what will happen in such a way that they also apply that to other people. ENFJs will use it as a consequence of what their extroverted feeling tells them, whereas ENTJs will do it as a consequence of what their extroverted thinking tells them to do. But similarly, they will use all of this and project it onto a bigger group of people to apply it and help others with it. Next, we've got introverted intuition as a child function or tertiary function. This is the case of ISFPs and ISTPs. And what we can observe here is that these 2 personality types really enjoy playing with this function. It's their childish, naive function that they like exploring and playing with. And they will naturally navigate the world trying to find underlying meanings, and they're curious about it. However, they will often be distracted by their extroverted sensing, who kind of tells them to focus on realistic inputs and to focus on living in the moment. So their predictions for the future and their insights and their vision will often be very much ingrained in their sensory input and their realistic inputs that they gather all the time from the world around them in a much more conscious way than an INFJ and an INTJ would do, for example. They like using this function in a stress-free environment, because this is usually the case with our child function. And if in stress, or if they're tired or something like that, or overwhelmed, they will much more naturally rely on extroverted sensing, on living in the moment and focusing on practical, realistic things. Next, we've got introverted intuition as an inferior function. This describes ESTPs and ESFPs. who similarly to ISTPs and ISFPs will be curious about underlying meanings and will be kind of drawn to understand what they can do to plan for the future in an efficient way. However, it will be difficult for them to do it because of their dominant extroverted sensing. And often enough, when they try to plan and anticipate and be very organized and systematic about the future, they will get distracted by what is happening right here, right now. So I've seen ESTPs naturally gravitate toward people who are better at looking into the future because they need some sort of a support to kind of understand what they need to do in order to get there. And they will have maybe the discipline to take things step by step, day by day, using their extroverted sensing. But sometimes they will lose track of what that future point looks like, something that NJ types find it much easier to do. However, when they actually use introverted intuition in a way that is helpful and useful for them, they will feel very good about it and they will feel very proud about it, because this is what our inferior function enables us to do. Feel proud of the accomplishments that we have, because it's something that we don't so naturally do all the time. Now we're going deeper into the unconscious and exploring introverted intuition as a shadow function. So firstly, we've got the Nemesis introverted intuition, which is the case of ENTPs and ENFPs. What will happen here is that these types will mobilize the resources brought by their introverted intuition in situations where their extroverted intuition is not enough for them. So let's say that the world challenges them to use more intuition to solve a problem or understand a concept or something, and it will feel like to them that their extroverted intuition, which is scattered and continuously finding and looking for new patterns, will need the support of a more systematic, organized way of dealing with concepts. So they will mobilize introverted intuition, and sometimes they will be good at it. However, their approach will still be kind of limited and a bit scattered. And it can also happen that they will project this onto other people. And when they see others who use introverted intuition, especially NJ types, they will feel like those people are opposing them, because this is the role of the Nemesis function. It feels like people using this function are kind of opposing us and fighting us, although this is not necessarily the case. Introverted intuition as a critical parent function. This is the case of INTPs and INFPs, for whom this manifests as this harsh critic in their heads. And you will notice that INFPs and INTPs falling into their critical parent role will kind of be very, very critical of people who they perceive to be shallow-minded. And also they will be very critical of people who don't try to understand deeper meanings, underlying things, and so on and so forth. They can also fall into the trap of being obsessively critical of themselves in the way that they compare their accomplishments to those of other people, and they feel that they're not deep enough, they're not good enough. Also, the critical parent introverted intuition can manifest as a tendency to really have no tolerance for hypocrisy and for things that are not kind of consistent and in accordance with each other. Next, we've got introverted intuition as a trickster or blind spot function. This is the case of ESFJs and ESTJs, who will have very much difficulty accessing this function and understanding it in a conscious way. And this is because the trickster function is something that we have very much difficulty seeing and relating to. So they will think that people who make predictions about the future using their introverted intuition are kind of weird and fatalistic, and they will dismiss all of this symbolism and ideas and concepts in favor of more realistic inputs. However, they will use it themselves in unconscious, stressful situations, and they will do it in such a way that they kind of manipulate others and prove to themselves that the negative things that they were expecting are actually happening. And lastly, we've got introverted intuition as a demon function, so the 8th function in the cognitive stack. This describes ISFJs and ISTJs who will have a lot of difficulty relating to and understanding this function, even more so than ESFJs and ESTJs, because it seems like this is very far apart from how they are like. So they will perceive people using this function as extraordinarily fatalistic and negativistic about the future, and they will believe that they are way too obsessed on predicting what is happening. They will also probably think that NJ personality types have a tendency to overanalyze things and think too much about things, and can get annoyed at everyone's tendency to be so obsessed with the future and what things could possibly mean. They will much more prefer focusing on more realistic practical inputs that the sensorial practical world feeds them with. So thank you guys, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoy it, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And see you next time with another video on cognitive functions explained.